I was not prepared for what I found in that tunnel. I stretched over for a mile in the back of what should have been the free times free interior of Porta Pot. I had thought I'd been there by a flying brain, and what I found succeeding in surprising me. I had planned to come prepared, and there was ultimately little that I thought would be useful. I packed a store bought survival kit, ropes and flares and whatnot, a heavy metal snow shovel, the only weapon I really thought would accomplish anything. The eggheads only ever responded to the burgeoning, and even then, that only seemed to be speeding the hatching process. There's no way I could hit one with the brain flies with a bullet, but in a closed space, I suppose I could give one good whack. Besides the fundamental possibility of its existence, the tunnel was wholly unremarkable. A slightly rounded, concrete corridor interrupted by a squarish, rusted crates. The distant droning escalated as I progressed, and soon enough, the tunnel gave way to what I suppose I could describe it as sort of a factory floor. I didn't know how long I spent there, just standing slack-jawed, my brain fumbling over itself to process everything I was seeing. Think of everything that comes to mind when you hear machinery. Turning cogs, conveyor belts, churning positions, whirling fans, mechanisms of every conceivable design, and then some cranking and pumping away in a space too vast that no floor, ceiling, or walls could have ever been distant in the darkness. Now imagine somebody threw that all away and hired clowns to remodel. 50 or 60 years of neglect later, you might see something that close to buttonistic. Hell, I even stumbled on everything alternate between cold, grimsy steel to sort of a Candyland moffit, but with vividly striped pumbling and polka-dotted ductwork. I jumped out of the shower of sparks, and then they flew from the immense robotic arm overhand. It rushed its metal chasing and tangled red wiring stark contrasted its Mickey Mouse gloved hand. I found myself retreating for a few steps into the tunnel as it reached out, joints groaning with neglect, and pushed a tremorous lever with the shining pink knob, an action inexplicably punctuated by the sound of a quacking duck. Intently, a checkerboard-looking conveyor belt squealed itself to life, issuing forth a procession of what may have been dead pigs, though I didn't see their heads, or even the ragged stumps of them may have been once attached. With a ridiculous side whistle sound, another huge object rose into view, an angular pink and purple funnel, the size of a swimming pool. One by one, the mystery carcasses tumbled off into the conveyor belt and into the huge trumpet, each followed by a tortuous, rending sound of brief but voluntary geyser of thick brown blood. The sink was overpowering. Ministered by the spectacle of Willy Wonka's sausage factory, I nearly fell on my ass at the large object shot over my shoulder. A brainfly. It had come up through the tunnel behind me, and narrowly dodged my head at least a few inches. As my heart cautiously restarted itself, I felt my way to the knowledge that it was still no obvious concern to the things that have been intriguing us, as I was into what seemed to be their headquarters, or at least extension of it. I wasn't even sure if I was that or reassuring. The parasite had blanked and banged sharply upwards, left towards the tunnel, but I could still hear the distinctive fluttering of big, membranous wings between the whirling, grinding, and occasional goofy honking of the factory. I craned my head, waiting for a irregular cracking of the equipment to illuminate the gloom. Sure enough, I could see hundreds, thousands of glistering, pinkish shapes passing good to 10 to 15 stories overhead, all in the same direction as I followed. A network catwalks made an investigation relatively easy, and I was usually able to keep out of sight of the concrete wall that I emerged from. The tunnel entryways were frequent, brainflies periodically zipping through to join their brothers and sisters above, Even if I had lost my way, I was confident that our tunnel might be empty back into the real world, and probably in a populated area. They needed bodies, after all. I shuddered at the thought of it, but now casually, the thought had come. I was growing too used to this, uncomfortably uncomfortable. The Suzanne slaughterhouse offered the shortage of grotesque spectacles. Rivers of meat slush oozed their way through the metallic clutches as wide as cities, process of corpses bobbling sluggishly in the current and sometimes against it. Towering circular motion saws loomed over the mercury Ferris wheels, chewing their way through the slabs of solid flesh meat that could have been fed to the whole towns. What living thing could have done to make that much flesh on it? A steady splattering turned out to be a blender the size of a small house, literally just scaled up householder blender. It's even a giant-sized dial, a blitz with the only label saying "Exit." I suppose you could describe it as endless truckloads of live white mice, pouring as into excited in a sense. I passed the bubbling lakes of entrails, fermenting tanks of gasping fish heads, mountains of broken, bloodied bones. The endless procrastination of meat eat hooks, filled with bizarre imagery of carcasses that are in the tangled railway system, from skinned cattle to things I doubt that you would have found in any textbook. There were insect-like forms as big as man, tentacle masses, dribbling oddly, colored anchored into something that I could only describe as a hairy swordfish. The cargo, as twisted, it was some time before I even noticed what was wrong with the meat hooks themselves. They had no wheels, but clung onto the rails by a metallic spider-like legs, tip-tapping along the blinding speed. The further I advanced, the louder the wet, slimy flapping of alien flock. More and more streams were converting into a single mass migration, their collective wings nearly drowning out the buzzing, grinding and splattering of the factory. I still wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I knew I was getting closer.